I'll take her place. A strong voice from Mark Hunt, a black warehouse worker, cut through the terrified silence. Soon, the sound of zip ties being cut echoed through the cold warehouse off Alameda Street in South Los Angeles. This wasn't a typical Friday night. What happened in that building shocked an entire nation and changed everything they thought they knew about sacrifice and the value of a human life. A 3-4-year-old single father named Mark Hunt stood with his hands raised. His work boots were worn, his supervisor uniform stained with the day's labor. 3 armed kidnappers surrounded him, their guns trained on his chest. They had just dragged Cindy Hennessy, wife of tech billionaire Richard Hennessy, into this warehouse. Bound and terrified, demanding $50 million, behind those guns stood Dante Price, the man who orchestrated this nightmare. He had his finger on the trigger and a look of disbelief on his face. Dante told the others, "This fool really thinks he can trade himself for her." His voice dripped with bitter amusement. Each word measured Mark as worthless, as just another invisible black man the world wouldn't miss. Mark's world hung in the balance. Through the fear, in a steady, resolved voice, he said words that would echo across every news channel in America. "Let her go. Take me instead. I'm nobody, but she's your leverage. You need her alive." This wasn't just an offer. This was a father's decision that his daughter would grow up knowing he stood for something even if it cost him everything. But Dante didn't know something. The kidnappers had no idea either. What was about to unfold would flip the script on heroism and leave a nation asking impossible questions. The truth was this: a poor black man's life was about to prove it had the same worth as a billionaire's wife, maybe more. And that truth would expose America's ugliest assumptions and show the devastating beauty of selfless sacrifice. If you believe every life has equal value, subscribe and type "hero" in the comments. You will definitely get a heartwarming reply from me. Asterisk, asterisk. But let's rewind. Let's go back to where this all started. Because 12 hours earlier, Mark Hunt and Cindy Hennessy were living completely separate lives, and neither had any idea that by midnight, their worlds would collide in blood, terror, and an impossible choice. Mark Hunt's 2009 Camry rattled to a stop outside Audubon Middle School in Crenshaw. The transmission made that grinding noise again, the one he'd been ignoring for 3 months, because a repair would cost $800 he didn't have. "Dad, your car sounds like it's dying," Zoe said, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. "She's got life in her yet," Mark said, forcing a smile. "Just like your old man." Zoe leaned over and kissed his cheek. Her braces caught the morning sunlight. "Another $280 payment due next week. Love you, Dad. You picking me up at 3? We're still doing pizza and movie night, right?" Mark's chest tightened. "You know it, baby girl. Wouldn't miss it." She grinned, 12 years old, all attitude and hope, and disappeared into the crowd of kids streaming through the school gates. Mark watched until he couldn't see her anymore. He always did that, every single morning, like if he looked away too soon, something bad might happen. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. "Supervisor needed for inventory tonight. Overtime pay. Reply Y or N." Mark stared at the message. His thumb hovered over the screen. Friday night. Pizza night. Their tradition. The one night a week where he wasn't working doubles. Where he could just be Dad. Where they'd watch whatever movie Zoe picked and argue about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. But that extra $50, that was groceries for the week. That was the gas money to get him through next week. That was the difference between making rent on time or getting another late notice taped to his door. He closed his eyes. Saw Zoe's face, the disappointment she'd try to hide. He typed, "Y," sent it. The guilt hit immediately, twisting in his gut like a knife. 15 miles west, in a Malibu mansion worth $18 million, Cindy Hennessy stood in her marble kitchen sipping a $9 green juice from Erewhon. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. She scrolled through Instagram without really seeing it. Influencers, sponsored posts, people pretending their lives were perfect, just like her. Her assistant, Melissa, appeared in the doorway, iPad in hand, perfectly professional. Mrs. Hennessy, confirming tonight's schedule. The gala starts at 8. Your car service will pick you up at 7:30. Richard's flying back from San Francisco. His jet lands at 7:45. Cindy set down her juice. He's actually coming? That's what his assistant confirmed. Another charity gala. Another night in a designer gown, smiling for cameras, playing the role of the devoted billionaire's wife, while her husband worked deals on his phone and barely looked at her. 6 years of marriage. She couldn't remember the last real conversation they'd had. Perfect, Cindy said flatly. Another night pretending everything's fine. Melissa shifted uncomfortably. Is there anything else you need? No, thank you, Melissa. As her assistant left, Cindy stared out at the ocean. Somewhere out there, real people were living real lives. Struggling, sure, but at least feeling something genuine. She felt nothing but empty. Neither of them knew it yet. But in a beat-up Chevy Tahoe parked 3 blocks from Cindy's mansion, 3 men sat watching, waiting, planning, and by midnight, Mark Hunt and Cindy Hennessy's worlds, separated by 15 miles, $15 million, and everything that divided America, would collide in the most impossible, devastating way. One would make a promise to his daughter he couldn't keep. The other would lose everything she thought defined her. And both would discover that Friday, October 13th, would be the day their lives split into before and after. Asterisk. Asterisk. Dante Price had been watching the Hennessy mansion for 3 days straight. He knew the security guard rotation, knew the housekeeper left at 6 p.m. on Fridays, knew Richard Hennessy was in San Francisco until tonight, knew everything he needed to know. The beat-up Chevy Tahoe was parked 3 blocks down on Pacific Coast Highway, close enough to watch, far enough to stay invisible. Tinted windows, stolen plates, untraceable. Beside him, Jamal scrolled through his phone, reading out loud. Richard Hennessy, founder of Tech Vault Security. Net worth $4.2 billion. He let out a low whistle. Man's literally got a yacht bigger than my mama's whole house. Got a private jet. Got homes in Malibu, Aspen, and the Hamptons. Meanwhile, people sleeping on Skid Row, 10 miles from here. Dante's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the binoculars so hard his knuckles went white. 3 months ago, his nephew Marcus died, 22 years old. Diabetic ketoacidosis. Couldn't afford insulin $400 a month. Might as well be $4 million when you're broke. Marcus sat in that county hospital waiting room for 6 hours, gasping for air, begging for help. By the time they saw him, it was too late. While Marcus died, people like Richard Hennessy were buying their 3rd vacation home. You good, D? Jamal asked quietly. Dante didn't answer. He'd spent 8 years in Pelican Bay State Prison for armed robbery. Got out 2 years ago. Tried to go straight. Applied to 50 jobs, restaurants, warehouses, construction. Got 2 callbacks. Both said no after the background check. The system was rigged. Always had been. They wanted you to stay down. Stay poor. Stay invisible. So Dante stopped trying to play by their rules. In the back seat, Rico checked his Glock 19, making sure the magazine was full. 15 rounds. When we moving? Dante watched through the binoculars. Cindy Hennessy stood in her massive kitchen, laughing on her phone. Probably planning brunch with her rich friends. Probably never worried about rent or food, or whether she could afford to live another day. Tonight, Dante said quietly. Richard's jet doesn't land until 7:45. She's got a car picking her up at 7:30 for some charity event. We hit the house at 7:15. She'll be alone, getting ready. Guard rotation changes at 7. 3-minute window. And if something goes wrong? Rico asked. Dante lowered the binoculars. His eyes were cold, dead. Nothing's gonna go wrong. We get in, we get her, we get out. $50 million. We make the drop tomorrow night, split the money, disappear. Jamal shifted uncomfortably. Man, kidnapping's federal. We get caught. We ain't getting caught. Dante's voice was steel. I spent 8 years in a cage for stealing $3,000 from a liquor store. These people steal millions from us every day and call it business. Tonight, we take back what they owe. Through the binoculars, he watched Cindy set down her phone, stretch, walk toward the stairs. Probably going to pick out which designer dress to wear tonight, which diamonds, which life to pretend was real. She had no idea her world was about to shatter. But 15 miles away, in a warehouse off Alameda Street, Mark Hunt was clocking in for his overtime shift. Completely unaware that by midnight, he'd be zip-tied on a concrete floor, staring down the barrel of a gun, making an impossible choice that would change everything. The wheels were already in motion, and there was no stopping what came next. Asterisk. Mark's shift at Pacific Distribution Center dragged like every other Friday. The concrete floor was unforgiving beneath his steel-toed boots, and by 10 a.m., his lower back already had that familiar ache. The kind that started as a whisper and became a scream by hour 12. He supervised the dock workers loading trucks, clipboard in hand, checking off shipments, box after box, pallet after pallet. The same routine he'd done 5 days a week for the past 6 years. His hands were calloused, his shoulders tight. And somewhere around noon, he realized he'd been on his feet for 7 hours straight. Lunch was a gas station burrito from the 7-Eleven 2 blocks down, reheated twice, eaten standing by the loading dock, because sitting down meant he might not get back up. The microwave had burned the edges, but left the center cold. He ate it anyway, washing it down with lukewarm coffee from a thermos Zoe had decorated with stickers when she was 8. Yo? Mark! Darnell called out, wheeling a dolly past him. You staying late tonight? Mark nodded, crumpling the burrito wrapper. Overtime. Darnell let out a low whistle, shaking his head. Man, you work too damn much. When's the last time you had a Friday night off? Mark shrugged. Got a kid? Yeah. But you also got a life. This is my life. Darnell didn't push it. He knew. Everyone at the warehouse knew. Single dad? No help? No choice. At 3 p.m., Mark stepped outside into the smoggy Los Angeles heat and dialed his mom. She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice tired in that bone-deep way that comes from 20 years of standing behind a grocery store register. Hey, Mama, can Zoe stay with you tonight? I got inventory. Brenda sighed, but her answer was immediate. Course, baby. I'll pick her up from school. Thanks, Mama. I owe you. You don't owe me nothing. That's what family does. Mark hung up and stared at his phone for a long moment before texting Zoe. Sorry, kiddo. Rain check on pizza. Love you. 3 dots appeared. Then, it's cool, Dad. But he could read between the lines. She was disappointed. Again. He disappointed her a lot lately. Every missed movie night, every canceled weekend trip, every promise broken because rent was due, or the car needed fixing, or life just kept happening. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and returned to the warehouse floor. The fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like 1,000 dying insects. 15 miles west, Cindy Hennessy reclined in a massage chair at Burke Williams Spa in Santa Monica. Cucumber slices on her eyes, while a technician worked lavender oil into her shoulders. Afterward, She sat in a salon chair getting a blowout, scrolling through Instagram, double-tapping photos of friends' vacation homes in Tuscany. At 6 p.m., she stood in her walk-in closet, bigger than Mark's entire apartment, selecting a $3,000 Valentino gown for tonight's charity gala. She had no idea that in 90 minutes, 3 men would crash through her front door, and that by midnight, a warehouse worker she'd never met would be the only thing standing between her and a bullet. Asterisk. By 7 p.m., the Pacific Distribution Center was a tomb. Everyone else had clocked out, eager to start their Friday night's bars, dates, family dinners, whatever normal people did when they weren't chasing overtime just to survive. Mark was alone now. Just him and 50,000 square feet of concrete, steel shelving, and cardboard boxes stacked 20 feet high. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that persistent electrical buzz that got inside your skull after a while. Rows of shelving stretched into shadows at the far end of the warehouse, disappearing into darkness the overhead lights couldn't quite reach. He moved methodically down the aisles with his scanner, counting boxes, checking barcodes, updating inventory in the system. Beep! Click! Move. Beep! Click! Move. Mindless, solitary work. The kind that let your thoughts wander to places you'd rather they didn't. Zoe's science fair project was due Monday. Something about renewable energy. He'd promised to help her this weekend, but now he'd be exhausted tomorrow, sleeping half the day just to recover. The Camry was making that grinding noise again when he shifted into third-gear transmission, probably, which meant at least $1,200 he didn't have. And there was that speeding ticket from 2 months ago, still unpaid, gathering late fees like interest on a debt he'd never escape. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, grateful for the distraction. A text to Zoe. "How's Grandma's?" 30 seconds later, a photo came through. Zoe and Brenda, faces pressed together, making goofy expressions. His mom's reading glasses were crooked. Zoe had given her bunny ears. Mark smiled, a real one, the kind that actually reached his eyes. This was why. Every aching shift, every missed Friday night, every disappointment. It was all for that smile. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and returned to his scanner. Across town, Cindy Hennessy stood in her walk-in closet, holding the Valentino gown up to the mirror. The deep emerald green looked stunning against her skin. She'd pair it with the diamond earrings Richard gave her for their anniversary. The ones that cost more than most people made in a year. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and declined the call. Probably a telemarketer. 10 seconds later, the security system beeped. A soft chime from the panel downstairs. Front gate opening. Cindy froze, gown still in hand. Richard wasn't due back until 8. She'd checked his flight tracker 20 minutes ago, still 30 minutes out from Burbank. She set down the dress and walked to the bedroom door, listening. Nothing. Hello? Her voice echoed through the empty mansion. Silence. Then, footsteps. Downstairs. Heavy. Multiple sets. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Richard? The footsteps stopped. Cindy moved toward the stairs, her bare feet silent on Italian marble. Hello? Miguel? Is that you? Maybe the security guard had duped her. She reached the top of the staircase and looked down into the foyer. 3 figures stood in the shadows by the front door. Ski masks, black clothing, guns. Cindy opened her mouth to scream. The lead man moved fast, faster than she thought possible. His gloved hand clamped over her mouth, cutting off the sound before it could form. She thrashed, eyes wide with terror, but he was too strong. Shh, Dante whispered against her ear. Cooperate, and you live. Asterisk. Asterisk. They moved like a precision unit. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Dante's hand stayed clamped over Cindy's mouth as she thrashed against him, her manicured nails clawing uselessly at his leather jacket. Her eyes were wild, pupils blown wide with primal terror. The kind that comes when your brain finally understands that the world you thought was safe never really was. "Jamal, cameras," Dante barked. Jamal was already moving, pulling a tablet from his backpack. His fingers flew across the screen. "Security feeds looping. We got 10 minutes before anyone notices." Rico swept through the mansion, gun raised, clearing rooms with practiced efficiency. Master bedroom, guest rooms, home office, media room. "Empty," he called out. "No staff. We're clear." Perfect. Friday night. Skeleton crew. Richard out of town. It was almost too easy. Cindy bucked harder, trying to scream through Dante's gloved hand. Muffled sounds, desperate and animalistic. He yanked a zip tie from his pocket and wrenched her wrists behind her back, pulling the plastic tight until it bit into her skin. She whimpered. "Shh," Dante said, his voice almost gentle. "Cooperate and you live. Fight me, and this gets ugly. Your choice." He ripped off a strip of duct tape and pressed it over her mouth. Her breath came in sharp bursts through her nose, hyperventilating, on the edge of panic. They dragged her toward the front door. Her bare feet slipped on the marble floor. The emerald Valentino gown, the one she'd spent 20 minutes selecting, tore at the shoulder as Dante hauled her forward. The sound of ripping fabric seemed obscenely loud in the silent house. Outside, the night was cool and quiet. Pacific Coast Highway hummed with distant traffic, but up here in the hills, the mansions were fortresses of privacy. Tall hedges, electronic gates, neighbors half a football field away. No one saw 3 masked men throw a bound woman into the back of a beat-up Tahoe. No one ever did. Cindy landed hard on the metal floor, gasping through the tape. Jamal jumped into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. Dante climbed in beside Cindy, pulled out his phone, and hit record. "Richard Hennessy," he said, camera pointed at Cindy's tear-streaked face. "Check your texts. You got 24 hours, $50 million, unmarked bills. I'll send you coordinates for the drop. No cops. No FBI. Or your wife dies." He leaned closer to Cindy, his voice dropping. "Say goodbye to your husband, Mrs. Hennessy," she sobbed, the sound muffled and broken behind the tape. Dante hit send. The van peeled out, tires squealing. Jamal navigated down the winding canyon roads, heading for the 10 freeway, east. Away from the ocean and mansions and safety. Dante lit a cigarette, cracked the window. Smoke curled into the night. "Relax, princess," he said, not unkindly. "This is just business. You do what you're told. You go home to your billion-dollar life. Simple." Cindy's chest heaved. Tears ran down her face, smudging her makeup. The van merged onto the freeway, speeding east through the Los Angeles night toward South LA. Toward Alameda Street. Toward a warehouse where Mark Hunt was scanning box number 247 of 831, completely oblivious that in less than 3 hours he'd be staring down the barrel of a gun and making a choice that would define the rest of his life. Asterisk, 9:47 p.m. Mark was down to the last section, automotive parts, aisle 12, when he heard it. The roar of an engine. Tires screeching on asphalt. Close. Too close. He froze mid-scan, the barcode reader still humming in his hand. The loading docks were closed. Locked. Nobody should be here. The night shift wouldn't start until 11 p.m., and even then, they used the front entrance. A van door slammed, hard, metal on metal. Voices harsh, urgent, mail cutting through the warehouse's hollow silence. Every instinct Mark had learned growing up in Crenshaw, every survival mechanism coded into his DNA, screamed one word: hide. He killed his flashlight and ducked behind a pallet stacked with boxes, pressing his back against the cardboard. His heart hammered against his ribs. The scanner slipped from his sweaty palm, and he barely caught it before it clattered to the concrete. The side door, the one that was supposed to be locked, the one that led directly from the alley, crashed open with a metallic bang that echoed through the warehouse like a gunshot. Footsteps, heavy boots, multiple sets. "Move! Move!" A voice, commanding and cold. Mark peered around the edge of the pallet, just enough to see. 3 men in ski masks burst through the doorway, and they were dragging someone. A woman. Her hands were bound behind her back with zip ties, silver duct tape across her mouth. Blonde hair fell in disheveled waves across her face. She wore an evening gown, emerald green, expensive-looking, but it was torn at the shoulder. One of her heels was broken, dangling from her foot. She stumbled, nearly fell. The lead man yanked her upright with brutal efficiency. Mark's heart pounded so hard, he was certain they'd hear it. His breath came shallow, each inhale burning his lungs. The lead man, tall, prison-fit, moving with the confidence of someone who'd done violence before, reached up and yanked off his ski mask. Face tattoos crawled up his neck. Tears tattooed under his left eye. Cold, dead eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. This wasn't some desperate amateur. This was someone who'd been inside. Someone who had nothing left to lose. He shoved the woman down. She collapsed onto the concrete, her shoulder hitting hard. A muffled sob escaped through the tape. Mark's stomach dropped. He recognized her. He'd seen that face before. On billboards along the 405, in magazine covers at the grocery store checkout, in news articles about tech industry power couples, Cindy Hennessy, Richard Hennessy's wife, the billionaire's wife, and Mark Hunt, a warehouse supervisor making $18.50 an hour, was the only witness. His phone was in his pocket. He could call 911, should call 911, but his hand wouldn't move. Because if he moved, if he made a sound, if they heard him, the second man pulled out a phone and started filming. The third checked the exits. Gun drawn. Mark pressed himself tighter against the boxes, barely breathing. And for the first time in his 34 years, he understood what it meant to be truly, utterly terrified. Because he knew with absolute certainty that if they found him, he was dead. Dante paced back and forth, phone in hand, his boots echoing off the concrete. The camera was still recording, pointed at Cindy's terrified face. She knelt on the floor, trembling so violently her whole body shook. "Richard Hennessy," Dante said, his voice sharp and controlled. "You listening? Your wife's alive. For now." He crouched down beside Cindy, tilting the camera to capture her tear-streaked face. $50 million. Unmarked bills. Non-sequential. By midnight tomorrow, I'll send coordinates for the drop. He stood, the camera following him. No cops. No FBI. No heroes. You try anything cute, and she dies. You understand me? She dies. He ended the video and immediately uploaded it to a burner email account he'd set up 3 days ago. Untraceable. Routed through VPNs in Romania and Thailand, the FBI could waste all the time they wanted trying to track it. "Done," he said, pocketing the phone. Cindy's eyes darted around the warehouse. The towering shelves, the shadows, the single exit, looking for escape, looking for hope, finding neither. Jamal grabbed her by the arm and dragged her to a steel support column near the center of the space. He pulled out another zip tie and secured her wrists behind the column, pulling it tight. She whimpered behind the tape. "Easy," Jamal muttered. "Just don't do nothing stupid." Rico was already moving. checking the exits with his gun drawn. He tested the side door they'd come through, then walked the perimeter. "Yo, D, this place is perfect. One way in, one way out. Good sight lines. Nobody around for blocks." Dante allowed himself a grin. "Yeah, ghost town at night. Nobody knows we're here. We sit tight, wait for Hennessy to wire the money, then we're gone. 12 hours, we're on a beach in Mexico." "Amen to that," Rico said. But Dante was wrong. 30 feet away, hidden behind a pallet of transmission fluid boxes, Mark Hunt pressed himself against the cardboard so hard he could feel the edges digging into his spine. His hand was shaking, actually shaking as he slowly, carefully reached into his pocket for his phone. His fingers closed around it. The screen was still off. Silent. Good. Should he call 911? His thumb hovered over the power button. But if he made a sound, any sound, they'd hear him. The warehouse was concrete and steel. Every noise carried a phone ringing, a voice whispering. Even the chime of 911 connecting it would echo like a gunshot. And then they'd find him. And then he'd die. Mark's breath came in shallow, silent gasps. Sweat dripped down his spine, soaking through his work shirt. His heart hammered so loud in his ears he couldn't hear anything else. Across the warehouse, Cindy's eyes swept the shadows one more time, and for just a split second, maybe less, her gaze landed exactly where Mark was hiding. Their eyes met through the darkness. She saw him, and in that instant, Mark Hunt realized something that made his blood run cold. He couldn't just hide anymore, because if he did nothing, she would die, and he'd have to live with that for the rest of his life. Asterisk. 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 Minutes stretched into eternity. Mark's legs cramped from crouching, muscles screaming in protest. He couldn't stay like this much longer. He had to move, had to shift position, just slightly. He adjusted his weight, leaning to the left. A box on the edge of the pallet tipped. Time slowed. The box fell. Crash. The sound detonated through the warehouse like a bomb. Cardboard hitting concrete, contents spilling everywhere. Metal parts clattered and rolled across the floor. What was that? Jamal's voice cut through the silence, sharp with alarm. Mark's blood turned to ice. Someone's here. Dante's voice was calm. Too calm. The voice of a man who'd hunted before. Footsteps. Fast. Coming his way. Mark scrambled backward, crawling behind another pallet. His hands and knees scraping concrete. His breath came in ragged gasps. Too loud. Too fast. A flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, sweeping across the warehouse like a searchlight. It found him. "Well, well." Dante's voice was almost amused. "Got ourselves a witness." Jamal appeared around the corner, gun raised. He grabbed Mark by the collar and yanked him out from behind the boxes with brutal force. Mark stumbled, tried to keep his footing. Failed. Jamal threw him to the ground. Mark's palms hit concrete. Pain shot up his wrists. He looked up. 3 guns, all pointed at his head. 3 men, standing in a semicircle around him. Dante crouched down, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. The beam hit Mark's face, blinding him. Up close, Dante's face was even harder. The tattoos, the scar tissue, the eyes that had seen too much violence to be shocked by more. "Who are you?" Dante asked. Mark's voice cracked. I work here. Inventory. Night shift. I didn't see nothing. I swear to God, I didn't." "Too late for that." Dante stood, raising the gun. The hammer clicked back with a sound that seemed impossibly loud. Mark's entire body went numb. This was it. This was how it ended. In a warehouse off Alameda Street on a Friday night, shot in the head for $50 in overtime pay. Zoe wouldn't even understand why. His mom would have to tell her. Your daddy was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, baby. Across the warehouse, Cindy's eyes locked onto Mark's through her tears. Two strangers. Different worlds, different lives. Both about to die. Mark's mind raced. 34 years. This was it? This was all he got? Working double shifts, raising his daughter alone, sacrificing everything just to survive? And for what? To die on a concrete floor, while three men who didn't even know his name pulled a trigger? No. Something inside him, something he didn't even know existed, ignited. His voice came out stronger than he expected. Wait. Dante paused, finger on the trigger. Wait? Man, you got 3 seconds to give me a reason. You don't gotta kill me, Mark said, the words tumbling out fast. You don't. I'm nobody. But her? He nodded toward Cindy. She's your leverage. You kill her, you got nothing. Game's over. But me? Nobody's coming for me. Nobody's paying ransom. I'm just a warehouse guy. Nobody. Dante's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? Mark's heart hammered. He could barely believe what he was about to say. Let her go. Take me instead. Asterisk. Asterisk. Silence fell over the warehouse. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop humming. Jamal broke first, laughing a sharp, disbelieving sound. Man's got a death wish. He's literally asking us to kill him instead. Shut up, Dante said, not taking his eyes off Mark. Mark stood slowly, hands raised, palms out. His legs shook, but he forced them steady. I'm serious. Let her go. Take me instead. I'm less trouble. Look at her, she's traumatized. Might do something stupid. Panic. Scream. Cops show up. Your whole plan falls apart. He swallowed hard. Me? I'll cooperate. I'll do whatever you say. Just let her go. Please. Dante studied him. Really looked at him. Saw the cheap work shirt with Pacific distribution stitched over the pocket. Saw the calloused hands. The exhaustion etched into a face too young to look that tired. Saw something else, too. Something he recognized because he'd seen it in the mirror every day of his 8 years inside. Desperation, yeah, but also something else. Sacrifice. The kind of thing that didn't make sense. The kind of thing that went against every survival instinct. The kind of thing Dante thought died in neighborhoods like the ones they both came from. You know what you asking? Dante said quietly. Yeah. Mark's voice didn't waver. I know. You don't know me. You don't know her. Why? Why? Mark glanced at Cindy, still zip-tied to the column, eyes wide and streaming tears. Then back to Dante. Because somebody's gotta. And maybe that's all I got left to give. Dante holstered his gun, pulled out a knife. He walked to Cindy and cut her zip ties with one quick motion. The plastic fell away. Go, he said. Cindy didn't move. She staggered to her feet, disbelieving, staring at Dante like he'd spoken a foreign language. Then her eyes found Mark across the warehouse floor. Two strangers. 15 miles and $15 million apart. Connected now by something neither could name. Why? She mouthed, the tape still across her lips. Mark's voice was barely a whisper. Just go. She ripped the tape from her mouth, gasping. I don't understand. Go! Dante roared. Cindy ran. Bare feet slapping concrete, torn dress trailing behind her. She stumbled once, caught herself, kept running. The side door burst open. And she disappeared into the South LA night, alive, free, saved by a man whose name she didn't even know. The door slammed shut. Dante turned back to Mark. Hero's gonna regret this, he said. He grabbed Mark's arms, wrenched them behind his back. The zip tie bit into Mark's wrists, plastic cutting skin. Mark gasped, but didn't fight. Jamal shook his head. Man! You just signed your own death warrant. Maybe, Mark said quietly. Rico pushed him down to the concrete. Mark's knees hit hard. Dante stood over him, phone already out, already texting new instructions to Richard Hennessy. Change of plans. We have a new hostage. Still want 50 million. You have until midnight tomorrow. Outside, Cindy stumbled through dark streets, sobbing, until headlights found her a patrol car on routine rounds. Within minutes, sirens would wail. FBI would mobilize. News helicopters would circle. And Mark Hunt, warehouse supervisor, single father, invisible man, would become the center of a standoff that would grip the nation. But right now, zip-tied on cold concrete with 3 guns trained on him, all Mark could think about was Zoe. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Cindy stumbled through dark streets, barefoot and broken. Her feet were shredded, blood streaking the asphalt. The torn Valentino gown hung off one shoulder. She had no idea where she was, somewhere in South LA, somewhere dangerous, somewhere far from the safety of her world. Headlights blinded her. She threw her hands up, squinting. A patrol car screeched to a stop. Doors flew open. Jesus Christ! One officer started. Ma'am, are you Mrs. Hennessy? The second officer's voice shot up an octave. He'd seen the Bolo alert 30 minutes ago. Kidnapped billionaire's wife. All units respond. Cindy collapsed against the hood, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. They have someone warehouse, he traded. Get paramedics, now! Within minutes, it was chaos. FBI Special Agent Sarah Cho got the call at 10:43 p.m. By 11:15, she had SWAT teams, hostage negotiators, and aerial surveillance converging on a 3-block radius in South LA. News helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights cutting through the night. Police barriers went up. Traffic rerouted. Snipers took positions on rooftops. Pacific Distribution Center was surrounded. Inside the warehouse, Dante stood at a cracked window, peering through the gap. Red and blue lights strobed everywhere. Armored vehicles. Tactical units moving into position. A helicopter spotlight swept across the building's exterior. Feds everywhere, he said, his voice tight. They got us locked down. What? Rico shot to his feet, panic flooding his face. How'd they? She must have. Of course she did. Jamal snapped. We let her go. What'd you think was gonna happen? We gotta move. Rico paced frantically, gun in hand. Back exit! We run for it! Dante slammed his fist into the wall. Concrete cracked. Where? They got the building surrounded. Snipers on the roofs. We step outside. We're dead. The reality crashed down on all 3 of them at once. They were trapped. Jamal sank onto a crate, head in his hands. Man, we're done. We're so done. Rico kicked a box, sending it skittering across the floor. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to… Shut up! Dante growled. Let me think. Mark sat on the cold concrete, back against a steel column, wrists zip-tied behind him. The plastic had cut into his skin hours ago. Blood trickled down his hands, sticky and warm. His shoulders screamed from the position. His back ached. His throat was raw from thirst. But none of that mattered. He thought about Zoe, waking up tomorrow morning at his mom's place, making waffles, watching cartoons. Then his mom's phone would ring, and she'd have to tell her, Baby, your daddy. He died last night. He was trying to help someone. Would Zoe understand? Or would she just feel abandoned again? First, her mother walked away. Now her father was gone too. Mark's eyes burned. But then he remembered Cindy's eyes in that moment. The terror, the pleading, the certainty that she was about to die. He remembered the choice he'd made, the words that came out of his mouth before his brain could stop them. Let her go. Take me instead. He couldn't have looked away. Couldn't have hidden. Couldn't have let her die. While he did nothing, even if it killed him, maybe especially then. Because for the first time in his life, Mark Hunt had mattered. His choice had saved a life. That had to count for something. Outside, Agent Cho's voice crackled over a megaphone. This is the FBI. The building is surrounded. Release the hostage and come out with your hands up. Dante's jaw clenched. He looked at Mark, and Mark saw it in his eyes, the calculation, the desperation. A cornered man with a gun was the most dangerous thing in the world. Asterisk 3 a.m. The warehouse had gone quiet. The FBI megaphone had stopped an hour ago. The helicopters still circled overhead, but farther out now, a constant, distant thrum. Waiting, watching. Dante sat down beside Mark, his back against the same steel column. The gun rested loose in his lap. His face was drawn, exhausted. The adrenaline had burned off hours ago, leaving only the crushing weight of reality. Why'd you do it? Dante asked quietly. Mark's throat was raw, his voice a rasp. Got a daughter. 12 years old. Zoe. He swallowed, tasting blood. I couldn't let that woman die and then go home and tell my kid I hid and did nothing. Couldn't look her in the eye. Dante stared at him for a long moment. You know who she is? Cindy Hennessy? Her husband's worth $4 billion. 4. With a B. His voice rose slightly, anger creeping in. Wild people like us. His voice broke. He looked away, jaw clenched so tight Mark could see the muscles working. My nephew Marcus died 3 months ago, Dante said finally. 22 years old. Diabetic. Couldn't afford insulin. $400 a month. Might as well be $4 million when you're broke. He laughed bitterly. He sat in county hospital for 6 hours, gasping for air, begging someone to help him. By the time they saw him, it was too late. Dante's hands shook. System didn't give a damn. He was just another poor black kid. Disposable. While people like Richard Hennessy buy their third house. Mark was silent. What could he say? It was true. All of it. I'm sorry, Mark said finally. That's evil. What happened to Marcus? That shouldn't happen to anyone. But so is this. Dante's eyes snapped to him, hardening. You think I don't know that? You think I wanted this? He gestured at the warehouse, the guns, the blood. But what else I got? I spent 8 years in Pelican Bay. Got out? Couldn't find work. Nobody wants an ex-con. Been invisible my whole life. His voice dropped to something almost like pride. Tonight, the world's watching. Tonight, I matter. Mark turned his head, meeting Dante's eyes. Yeah, Mark whispered. But what they seeing? Another angry black man with a gun. Another dead black man when this is over? That all you want to be? That all you want Marcus to see when he looks down at you? Dante flinched like he'd been slapped. Silence stretched between them. Outside, a radio crackled. Tactical units shifting positions. I got a daughter too, Dante said finally. So quiet Mark almost didn't hear. 8 years old. Haven't seen her in 3 years. Her mama won't let me near her. Says I'm dangerous. He laughed, hollow and broken. Maybe she's right. Maybe she's not, Mark said. Maybe you still got time to show her different. Dante looked at him, something raw and desperate in his eyes. How? How I walk out of this? Before Mark could answer, Rico's voice cut through the darkness. D. FBI's on the bullhorn again. They want to negotiate. Dante stood slowly, gun in hand. And Mark realized with cold certainty. The next few hours would decide if either of them saw their daughters again. Asterisk. Asterisk. Dawn broke over South LA, pale orange light spilling through the warehouse's high windows. Mark hadn't slept. His wrists were numb now, the zip ties cutting so deep he couldn't feel his hands anymore. Outside, Agent Sarah Cho checked her watch. 6:47 a.m. Negotiations had gone nowhere. Dante was spiraling, paranoid, making impossible demands. The window for a peaceful resolution had closed. She gave the order. Breach. Go. 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 Flashbangs detonated. The side door exploded inward. Smoke billowed through the warehouse. Tactical units in full combat gear flooded in, red laser sights cutting through the haze like angry fireflies. Down! Get down! Hands where we can see them! Dante moved on pure instinct. He grabbed Mark by the collar, hauled him to his feet, and pressed the gun to his temple. Mark's legs barely held him. "Stay back!" Dante screamed. "I'll kill him! I swear to God I'll—" Jamal raised his weapon, swinging toward the incoming agents. The sniper's bullet hit him center mass. He dropped instantly, weapon clattering to the concrete. "No!" Rico threw his gun down, hands up. "Don't shoot! I'm done! Agents swarmed him, tackling him to the ground. It was chaos. Smoke everywhere. Shouting. Boots pounding concrete. The strobe of flashlights and laser sights creating a disorienting nightmare. Dante dragged Mark backward, using him as a human shield. Gun, never leaving his temple. Mark stumbled, nearly fell. Dante's grip on his collar tightened, half choking him. "Back exit," Dante hissed. "We're getting out of here." They moved through the smoke. Mark's vision swam. His shoulder screamed where Dante's grip dug in. Ahead, through the haze, Agent Cho emerged. She'd just emptied her magazine, taking down Rico's partner. She was reloading, exposed, vulnerable, focused on her weapon. Dante's gun swung away from Mark's head, toward Cho. Mark saw it, saw the barrel line up, saw Cho, 40 feet away, oblivious. And in that split second, Mark saw everything. Zoe's face, her smile when he picked her up from school, her disappointment every time he canceled their plans, her voice, "It's cool, Dad." He saw every moment he'd felt powerless, every bill he couldn't pay, every dream he'd buried, every time the world told him he didn't matter, that he was just another invisible black man grinding to survive. Not anymore. Mark threw his entire body weight sideways, slamming into Dante. The gun fired. Pain exploded in Mark's shoulder, white-hot, blinding, total. He felt the bullet tear through muscle and bone, felt his legs give out, felt the concrete rushing up to meet him. Blood. So much blood. He collapsed. Agents swarmed Dante, tackling him to the ground. Weapons trained on his head. "Don't move! Don't fucking move!" Agent Cho ran to Mark, dropping to her knees beside him. She pressed her hands to his shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. Her hands came away red. "Medic!" she screamed. "Medic now!" Mark's vision blurred. The world tilted. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, slowing, fading. Cho's face swam above him. "Hey! Hey! Stay with me! You saved my life! You hear me? You saved my life!" Mark's lips moved. His voice was barely a whisper. "Tell Zoe. Tell her I was brave." His eyes closed. And the world went dark. Mark woke to the sound of machines beeping. Steady. Rhythmic. Alive. His shoulder was on fire, wrapped tight in bandages. An IV line snaked into his arm. The sterile smell of hospital disinfectant filled his nose. Cedars Sinai Medical Center. The placard on the wall read, "A private room." He'd never been in a private room in his life. Something warm gripped his right hand. He turned his head slowly. Every movement, agony, and saw her. Zoe. Asleep in a chair, pulled up beside his bed, her small hand wrapped around his. Her face was puffy from crying. Tear tracks dried on her cheeks. She was still wearing her pajamas, the ones with the little planets on them that she'd picked out at Target last year. Mark squeezed her hand. Her eyes flew open. "Dad!" She lunged forward, collapsing against his chest. Sobs tore out of her, raw and desperate. "You're so stupid! You could have died! You could have!" She couldn't finish. She just cried into his hospital gown, gripping him like he might disappear. Mark wrapped his good arm around her, holding her as tight as his battered body would allow. "I know, baby. I know. I know. Don't ever do that again. I won't. I promise." Brenda stood in the corner, tears streaming down her face, one hand pressed to her mouth. When their eyes met, she just shook her head, somewhere between fury and relief. The TV mounted on the wall played CNN. Mark's face filled the screen. A photo from his employee badge at Pacific Distribution. The chyron read, "Hero warehouse worker saves billionaire's wife." His phone, someone had plugged it in on the side table, buzzed nonstop. Messages flooding in. Hundreds of them. Then a knock at the door. Everyone turned. Cindy Hennessy stood in the doorway. She looked different than she had in the warehouse. Put together again. Hair styled. Makeup perfect. Wearing an elegant cream blazer and slacks. But her eyes were raw. Haunted. "Mark." Her voice broke on his name. She stepped inside, moving slowly, like she was entering a church. She sat in the chair on the opposite side of his bed, hands folded in her lap. "I don't have words," she said quietly. Mark's voice came out rough, his throat still raw. "You don't owe me nothing. I owe you everything." She looked at him, really looked at him. "You gave your life for mine. A stranger. You didn't know me. Didn't know if I was a good person or a terrible one. You just—" Her voice cracked. "You just did it." Silence settled over the room. Zoe had pulled back, but kept one hand on Mark's arm. Like she needed constant confirmation he was real. Cindy wiped her eyes. "What can I do for you?" "Anything. Name it." Mark looked at Zoe, at her red-rimmed eyes and the fear still etched on her young face. Then back to Cindy. "Make sure she knows her dad wasn't invisible," he whispered. "That he mattered." Cindy reached across and took his hand. Her grip was firm. "Sure. The whole world knows," she said. "I promise you. The whole world knows." Outside the room, news crews gathered. Interview requests poured in. The story was everywhere. Cable news, social media, morning shows. Mark Hunt, the warehouse supervisor who traded his life to save a billionaire's wife. But inside that hospital room, Mark only cared about one thing: Zoe's hand in his, and the promise in Cindy's eyes that maybe, just maybe, his sacrifice had meant something after all. Asterisk. Richard Hennessy came to the hospital 3 days later. He wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than Mark made in 6 months. Cindy stood beside him, her hand on his arm. "Mr. Hunt," Richard said, extending his hand. Mark shook at his left hand, since his right shoulder was still immobilized. "I want to offer you something. $500,000. As a thank you for saving my wife's life." Mark stared at him. $500,000. Life-changing money. Pay off every debt? Buy a house? Give Zoe everything? "No," Mark said. Richard blinked. "I'm sorry? That ain't why I did it." Mark's voice was firm. "I didn't trade myself for a payday. I did it 'cause it was right. You keep your money." Cindy stepped forward. "Mark, please, let us do something. For Zoe." Her eyes found the girl sitting in the corner, coloring in a hospital activity book. A trust fund. $250,000 for her education. College. Whatever she needs. Not for you. For her future. Mark looked at Zoe. At the daughter who deserved more than he'd ever been able to give her. Okay, he whispered. For Zoe. The weeks that followed were surreal. Mark returned to his apartment in Crenshaw, arm in a sling, shoulder healing slowly. But everything felt different now. Cindy visited. Not once, not twice weekly. She'd show up with art supplies, books, take Zoe to museums Mark couldn't afford. The two of them bonded over paintings and poetry, dreams bigger than Crenshaw could hold. Watching them together, this billionaire's wife and his daughter, laughing over sketch pads, Mark felt something crack open in his chest. He returned to work at Pacific Distribution 6 weeks later. His co-workers greeted him like a returning soldier. Someone had hung a banner, "Welcome back, hero." Mark tried to take it down. They wouldn't let him. But more than that, his community changed. People in Crenshaw, who'd never looked at him twice now, stopped him on the street, shook his hand, called him a hero. Young men who'd felt invisible their whole lives saw themselves in his story. So Mark started something new. Second Chances. A small non-profit helping ex-cons find work, getting them past the background checks that had kept them locked out. He knew what it meant to be invisible, to feel like the system was rigged. Maybe he could change that for someone else. 6 months after the warehouse, a letter arrived. Prison letterhead. Pelican Bay State Prison. Mark opened it. Mr. Hunt. It's Dante. I got 25 years. Probably deserve more. Been thinking about what you said that night. About what the world sees. About what I want to be. You were right. More bodies ain't justice. My nephew's death wasn't your fault or hers. Taking her wouldn't bring him back. Just make more people cry. Maybe there's another way. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm trying to figure it out. D. Mark sat at his kitchen table, pen in hand, and wrote back, Dante, there is another way. It starts with believing you matter, not because of what you take, because of what you give. Keep looking. You'll find it. Mark. Life was still hard. Rent was still due every month. His back still ached after long shifts. The Camry still made that grinding noise he couldn't afford to fix. But when Zoe looked at him now, she didn't see someone who disappointed her. She saw a hero. And for the first time in his 34 years, Mark Hunt believed he was one. Not because he was rich, not because the world had finally noticed him, but because when it mattered most, he'd cared more than he was scared, and that was worth everything. Mark gave everything to save a stranger. He didn't ask for recognition, didn't expect a reward. He just did what was right, when no one else would. Now I have to ask you something. What are you willing to give? This story took hours to write. Hours to craft every word, every emotion, every moment that made you feel something real. While you were reading about sacrifice, I was sacrificing my time to give you this experience for free. But here's the truth. Creators like me can't keep doing this on nothing but passion. Mark worked double shifts just to survive. I'm asking for far less. If this story moved you, if you felt something in Mark's choice, in Zoe's tears, in that moment when everything hung in the balance, then do something about it. Like this video, it costs you nothing. 1 second. 1 click. But it tells YouTube that stories like this matter. That real, raw, human storytelling deserves to be seen. Subscribe. Because if you don't, you'll miss the next story. And the next one might be the one that changes how you see the world. Comment below. Tell me what Mark's sacrifice meant to you. Tell me if you'd have the courage to do what he did. Your words fuel the next story. Mark didn't look away when it mattered. Don't you look away either.